to another live session of Ask the Coach. Uh, and so I was asked this question, and I think a lot of people they think it, but they don't always say it out loud. And that question is, how do you find success in your own team or department when the leader above you is failing? That's a real question. And I want to be clear from the start. I'm not going to be bashing any leaders. I'm not going to be playing the blame game. Not everyone gets to choose their leader, okay? But everyone gets to choose how they lead and where they stand. And so tonight we're going to talk about how winning actually works, why some teams survive bad leaders while others collapse, and the difference between winning once and sustaining excellent year after year. Okay, that this isn't theory, that this is what I've seen coaching, and this is what I work through with leaders every single day. Let's get into it. And so, wanna again, key framing here is not everyone gets to choose their leader, but everyone gets to choose how they lead and where they stand. And so when this question was brought to me, that it was asked, if you're somebody like that, because the first live I did was on LSU football, and they wanted to know, well, how do if you're somebody like Coach Blake Baker, who's the defensive coordinator, how do you continue to lead even though under Brian Kelly it was a failing organization? And so I think the simplest one for that as a coach to answer that, and I appreciate Nick for submitting that to me, is as the coach, you're coaching for your next job. Okay. You're coaching for your next job, but you're also coaching for your team, you're coaching for your players, you're coaching for all those who are there, and what that means for you. Okay. So very, very, very important that that you also take care of that. Okay. So you're always doing that. Now, what you can do in here is stabilize your space. So shrink your focus to what you can actually control. And for those of y'all who that are watching, that and maybe have been a listener of mine, I'm going to talk about. There's two things you can control each and every single day. That's your attitude and your actions. Okay, so your attitude and your actions. And so be real clear. All right. Um, that next in there, you have to build your standards inside your team or department. So just because the person above you that doesn't hold the same standards that you do doesn't mean that you can't hold your team to that same standards. Okay. And so you don't have to have the authority to create those standards. You just need consistency. So always having that and making sure that you're always doing that is a huge thing. Okay. Huge, 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 huge thing. And so appreciate see several of y'all jumping in on TikTok, and got a couple of seen hopping in on YouTube. Uh, so if you're just joining, all right, you don't need authority to create standards. You need consistency. Now, this is the work that most leaders are never taught. Not taught how to lead well without positional power, how to build systems instead of reacting to personalities. It's also the gap I see that when people ask why success doesn't last. And so that's very important that you understand that. Okay. Now, how these great teams survive and great people survive, okay, that is the leader of that team absorbs the chaos. And so hey, it's your job. If you're the leader of your organization and you're watching and you see something where there's instability at the top, or you're under a weak leader or a bad leader, that this is where you have to become that shield to your team. It's up to you to shield your team, and it's up to you to make that happen. And so that you're the one who prevents the dysfunction from showing up around you. Okay. Remember, you can control two things every single day: your attitude and your actions. And so you've got to be very, very intentional when it comes to protecting your team, like, from outside stuff. So make sure that you're the one that's protecting them, that you're the one that's showing, hey, that we can do it here. All right. So you've got to be that person that protects your team. Um, and so, and it's important to remember too that when leadership is weak, clarity is an advantage of yours. So if you're very sure on what you're doing and how you're wanting to do it, that this is a good thing. Okay. So you're going to be the one that gives you a competitive advantage to make sure your team is successful, because ultimately that's kind of the question I was asked, is when you're around somebody, when you're around people that, or you have a air quotes bad leader, how do you continue going? How do you ensure that your team is successful? How do you ensure all of that? And that's a very good question, and it's one that we all struggle with. It's one that we don't always get to know how to do, uh, but it is one that you can do when you become consistent. Your clarity that you bring to your team and shielding them, that helps you. Okay. Now, one that I was asked as well in here is that in order to be successful, they said winning breeds winning, but it's not how you think. Okay. So while yes, winning breeds winning. But how many times have you seen somebody work under a successful, and because football was the avenue that it was brought to me, that you've seen somebody work under a successful head coach and then go on and not be a successful head coach? So how often has that happened? More times than we'd like to count and like to remember. And so winning doesn't magically get to where it is. It's not like I can walk around, boop, you get to be a winner. And that JJ, you're a winner. And Ags, you're a winner. It's not like that. Um, and I was trying to quickly jump in and see if I could see who's live on YouTube. I see a couple of y'all, but it's not showing me any of that. So, but it's not something though that I control. Like, it's not a magic wand. It's trained. It's something that you go in and you have to buy into and create that culture. Okay. It's something that you go and you grow with. So college football right now, when you look at the four teams that are left in the college football playoffs right now, all four of those head coaches were assistant coaches under that, what is arguably the greatest that coach in college history as Nick Saban. So all four of them right now, assistants under Coach Saban. So great, great, great to do there. All right. Now, we can look at all these other things, but how many other of Coach Saban's other people that are other coaches, other assistant coaches, are no longer coaching in the game, that aren't successful? And again, it's because you don't inherit those wins. You have to take, inherit, and then implement the standards, the language, the habits, and the expectations. Okay. You know, so when you look at somebody like a Kirby Smart, who had a very long run, or when you look at somebody like a Lane Kiffin, or pick whoever else is in there, they didn't just see winning, they lived the process, they produced it. And then the next one, my next point is, they owned it. They weren't just exposed to winning, they owned it. In my own career, I was fortunate enough to be around some great head coaches. Congrats to Coach Neil Weiner winning state championship in the LHSAA, was under now Mayor President Coach Sid Edwards. Darnell Lee was another great head coach that I was under. And that these men that I was under, they didn't just say, "Hey, we're going to be a winner because we want to win." That they owned it, and they were all under other great head coaches. That- But they went and they made excellence a priority. They normalized excellence. They said that I'm not just gonna like be around excellence. They're gonna remove. One that I'll see all the time is they didn't make emotional decisions. They don't make their decisions based off of emotions. They make their decisions based off of what they know about winning and what they know. Okay. And so winning sticks around when it's baked into the daily environment, not just celebrated on Saturdays. And that's another one that most people don't think about either is they just go, "Oh, they win. Winning happens on Saturday." Winning doesn't happen just on Saturday. Winning happens like all of the time. It's an all of it. Like it's a Saturday through Saturday thing. Like you start the Saturday after the game and you carry it through to the next Saturday. Okay. And so the real difference, that people miss, that from the 1 year winnings, those people that are they win one time and then the next year you're like, where did they go? Is that 1 year they winning, it comes from talent spikes, the motivation, short-term energy, versus the sustained success comes from the systems, the leadership depth. And that's key. Okay. That's key. The leadership depth. That because if you aren't developing the leaders there, they how are or yourself, how are you going to continue to develop the other leaders? Okay. And so that these sustained success, they have habitual accountability. Now, this too, when I say habitual accountability, and this is a tough one, okay? Because this is one that I'll always remember, and people would ask me um, when I was coaching. Let's say you've got these rules, you've got these standards. How are you going to feel about them when the star athletes? And so I was in an interview and I did not get a job because one of the guys in the interview was talking about it, and he said our running back is a superstar. And I went, cool. I hope he's the first one to mess up. And they were like, what? And it was because I knew if I always loved it when it was my superstar that messed up because the team saw that, hey, if you're going to hold them accountable, then what are you going to do to me, the nobody? And so you've got to hold everybody to the same level, the same standards. That if the rule is on, because today's a Tuesday, on Tuesdays, we all wear a black Coach Clark shirt and they show up in a white one or a red one or a blue one, they're in trouble. You kick them out of practice. You send them home. You hold people to that standard right there. Okay. And so, consistency, it's not a talent issue. It really isn't. I've seen a lot of successful teams come without having the most talented team. The lack of consistency is a systems issue. Okay. And one of the reasons that people struggle to sustain success is because they and everything about emotions. It's not structural. Okay. And so that for those of you on here and still watching, I am going to be hosting a free training on goal setting where we talk about how to set goals that align with your systems, not just motivation. And if consistency has been a struggle for you, this training will help. So that it is on, you can click on any of the links in my bio. They have my Calendly link to that this Thursday at 1 p.m., Saturday at 11 a.m., and then again the following week. Okay. So just go check it out. It's on Calendly. It's all over here, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. Um, the next point for that, you've got atmosphere versus your infrastructure. Okay. And so I want to be able to distinguish this, in a winning environment. Atmosphere is how it feels when things are going well. And infrastructure is what holds them together when they aren't. Now, remember, we don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. Okay. we fall to the level of those systems. What we've built to be what we know as true that's going to hold everything together. Okay. And so anybody can go and create excitement. Anybody can do that. But few will build something that survives through adversity. Okay. And what feels boring is usually what is sustainable. This is one that you see, guys. I'm trying to remember who that I was talking to, but they told me, if you want to be successful, how good are you at being bored? Because the success, it's really boring. When you look at it, it's wake up, do this, wash, rinse, repeat. And then kind of my last points, okay, is I want to take this beyond sports. It's about businesses, it's about teams, it's about departments. Because realistically, most of us are never going to be on a high profile athletic team. Realistically, most of us are never going to be coaching at that elite level. But here's what I want you to take is you don't need a title to lead well. One that I preach all the time is leadership is influence. It's nothing more, nothing less. Leadership is influence. Okay. And so we're constantly influencing those around us. Hey, whether it's our parents, whether it's our coworkers, whether it's whoever, we influence those. It could be something as simple as that we influence somebody to buy something at the gas station, that to buy a Dr. Pepper versus a Coke or flip flop, whatever you want to use right there. Okay. Other thing that I think is important to take away with this is teams can outperform bad leadership temporarily. Okay. It's still, you still do need somebody higher up, but only if the internal leadership is there to support it. You have to have the internal leadership that to they keep that to get through some of that. Um, and those that long-term success, it requires systems, not heroes. Okay. And so think of it, and here's kind of where that I'll leave it on that. And so, if everything falls apart when one person leaves, the leadership was too shallow. And so the leaders who usually get this reach a point where they want to go deep, not into the hype, not into the structure. But and that's the kind of work we do in the environment, like developing the leader with you 2.0. This is where leadership becomes transferable. It's not dependent on one person. Leadership, we're constantly trying to influence those around us. And so, in closing, you can survive bad leadership by building local excellence. You can you can't build sustained success without those systems, those processes, those procedures. Winning is only repeatable when leadership is transferable. And so I would like to argue that winning doesn't breed winning, leadership does. And so if you've got questions, man, feel free to send them to me. You can DM me on uh, right now. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Facebook. I'm on TikTok. You can send them to me on there. Hey, you can send it to me via my website, coachaclark.com, or email me, Aaron at coachaclark.com. But then make sure you do that. Get your questions to me that way. That makes it easiest. And so, if you're frustrated what you see above you, the answer isn't to wait. It's to lead better where you are. That's how real cultures are built, and that's how winning lasts.